It's further out.
What's different than how it was? All right, especially going to get started. Happy Monday, everyone.
So I
Week 10. Are there any announcements? We good?
Wait, you guys can't go.
Okay, if there are no announcements, is a student representative from ASSOU here to do the ASSOU report? Okay, moving right along. I got an email from Jody today. She's unable to make it this afternoon. Any information that comes forward about IFS, she'll relay, and then I'll send it out and make sure it gets sent out to you all. I know that IFS Senate Chair Jeff Dents will be talking with Oregon State Board of Higher Education to present those materials that Jody's talked about and Charles Lane talked about as far as our IFS representatives for a while. That'll be this week. So any information that comes from that, I'll certainly send that out to everybody. So moving on, University Studies, final report.
That is moving on.
It is.
Well, University Studies Committee would like to present its final report. And in an effort to make sure that everyone in the committee had an opportunity to put their say on it, it's just coming out and it will be submitted in a digital format as well for you. So I did bring copies and I'm happy to go through this process and talk about anything you might have questions about. One of the things the final report asks us to do is talk a little bit about what the primary duties are, what did we accomplish this year, to kind of break it down, what did the committee accomplish during this academic year, and breaking it down as to which courses came forward and were approved. And then some of the recommendations as we move forward, issues and additional responsibilities. And then given some of the aspects of what we've learned and recommendations to the Senate. So I'm sure many of you are aware that much of the time for faculty in the committee this year focused around the development of the houses, and that was really the center. Do we need more copies? Oh, thank you. That was really the aspect of getting through some of this year. Thanks. And there's a couple of folks that also sit on the committee here that can talk about things as well. So I guess the big thing would be is if you have any questions or concerns. The other thing for me that I'd like to say is when we talk about what needs to be done as we move forward, I think it was wonderful that we have the support of the Senate. We have named the subcommittee the keeper of the templates. They're also the group that's helping to formulate the assessment tools or rubrics as we design our university studies curriculum within the houses to be assessed on the institutional level. And then there's the big question that still remains, and that's what should happen with the possible case strand. Are we going to do a high impact strand? And if so, should University Studies Committee take on the opportunity to create what the template would look like for that and bring information back and forth to the Senate? Should we collaborate with the subcommittee or the assessment committee to make this happen? So there's some questions for next year as this committee starts. I will say the committee will definitely need a chair, so as we turn to Faculty Senate for filling those committee slots, please be thinking about what committee you'd like to serve on. There's several openings coming up, as you can see from the last page. And so if this is something you're passionate about and someplace where you'd like to serve, Elizabeth has served several times as chair of that committee. There's work involved, but it's very meaningful work. There are committees sometimes where you can feel like you show up and things get done. There are committees where you roll up your sleeves and it takes a lot of work to get things done. This is definitely one of those committees. So as you're considering, it's an important committee, and we'd love to have you if you're interested. Questions? No, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, President Collins?
Don't have much here. Tuesday, we have our end of the year breakfast at 7:30, so I assume those notifications will be going out. We're moving forward on the institutional board. I've got nominations from the SEIU folks today, and I know, Dave and all, you're moving forward on your process. And I'm moving forward with the external folks. And we've got commencement with, our speaker is David Saracen, who is, many of you, I'm sure know, a journalist for the Oregonian. He writes very passionately about how Oregon has stepped away from public higher education. But he's written a book on that topic. I mean, he's really been a tremendous advocate for universities in the state. But he also has a PhD in history, and so he has a really interesting background. Went into journalism because he was so passionate about these issues about funding. So that's it. I'm winding things up at the end of the year like you are. So. Brief report.
Could you confirm or deny for us that we are losing the provost? We haven't seen him in the last 2 meetings, and it'd be nice if we could end the year with some sense as to where we're headed next year.
Personnel issues I can't really talk about, so as soon as I've got something that we're all comfortable with, I will tell people.
Thank you.
Thank you, President Collins.
Thank you.
The next item is an information only item. It is a sabbatical form. It's not a new form per se. It was, Joe McGee, a task force went through to try and make sure that the process of how the sabbatical application goes as far as its route through the university is a little bit more streamlined and it's more, I guess, verifiable as far as different components or different stages. So she sent this to me last week, the task force did, and this is just so that we can view the information as far as the improvements upon the routing form and the different components of it. If there are any questions, I'm certain that Joe would be happy to answer them if you have them. Unfortunately, she's not able to be here today because she had another prior engagement. Carol?
Can I just ask a general question?
Sure.
There was page 11, there was a notes section, is that new information? So it just says 3 points and it says notes on the top.
Are you talking about the?
1, 2, 3.
Yes.
Which are about PDA funds?
No, where it talks about the division director and consultation with the program chair.
I
That,
think that's the same, but we moved language to reflect the
The changes
academic
in-
reorg, yeah.
okay, so that's what I wanted to know because I did have a question about point 3 about faculty are required to present their findings. So I didn't know if that has always existed.
Right.
I don't remember the required part. Because sometimes the findings aren't
Yeah, I think
necessarily
it used,
presented.
To be required long ago.
Yeah.
And then it's gone out of being required recently. And there was a lot of, feeling that that was a problem and that people should be in some venue presenting on their sabbatical. So it might be at SOAR, it might be at a,
Yeah, it says that.
seminar,
It
wherever.
says that, but I
it used to be disseminating the information or
Yeah,
the
that's what I
findings,
thought.
and it kind of just went away.
okay.
And so we just thought we increased the breadth of venues where you could do that, but the essential spirit of it was the same as previously.
Okay. I was concerned about the required part. I can see saying encouraged or.
No, I think it was
Multiple
required, I
venues.
can go back and double check that, but that was the expectation would be that you would come back and do something. I'm not sure about the exact wording, but
Language.
yeah,
Okay, but.
I'm happy to look and check.
Thank you.
I know these been being done though for at least 7 years.
Yeah, it's probably been
Okay, at least that, I
And
can't
that's maybe
remember.
like a,
Thanks, Sherry. Thanks, Carol. Any other questions? Dennis?
Dave, do we know the genesis of this, revision?
I do not. No.
Like, I mean, there's a higher degree of, say, accountability built into the form, or is it an old form that's being revived, or?
I do not.
I mean, is there some reason to believe that faculty aren't using their time wisely on sabbatical?
I think, in order to answer those questions, we probably want somebody from the task force, to talk to that.
Sherry was on the task
So
force.
I was on the task force,
And I
I'm
was
willing
as
to
well.
talk to that.
Sure, fantastic.
There was a wide variability in the quality of sabbatical applications and the information. A lot of it is similar to what used to be with promotion applications before we started to try to define expectations and stuff. You saw a wide variety depending on what each department provided as information. And there are expectations in the bylaws that have been long-standing about several of these items, but it was never transparently laid out to faculty. So our goal was just to gather all of the things that are expectations around sabbaticals from bylaws, CBA, wherever, and get it in one form where it would be transparent and everybody would know. So that you wouldn't suddenly get surprised when you came back with, where's your report, what report, I didn't know I had to do a report. What happens to the report once I do it, who sees it, who doesn't see it? And it was trying to answer all of those questions in one place. So it also, in the process, tried to clear up what the application information is so that it'd be more consistent. And it wouldn't rely on you knowing someone who'd done it before who could tell you what was the right parts to put in and what wasn't. Does that make?
Sure. I just wondered, there must have been some sort of notion of, we have to change this form to do this because of maybe something that's going on. And I don't know, there seems, like when you have these notes in here that says, a sabbatical is not a vacation. I think that sets a tone that doesn't really respect the time that faculty have earned, and then how they plan their study to further their scholarship. So
So there have been problems. I do
Right,
wish to
so-
discuss the problems. But that
But
was
that was
part
my-
of
that was my
what
question.
called it to light. There were two things that called it to light. One was that some people had a mistaken notion of what a sabbatical should consist of. And the other was that sabbatical applications in some instances were very difficult to evaluate because they weren't bringing forward information that made it easy to judge what was going to happen. And this sought to address both. We actually stole the typology and the what a sabbatical's not off of another university where we thought that that would be helpful. We did not mean or intend or even think that it would be taken like a put down or something like that. Though when I shared it with my chairs, they suggested reorganize the order because they pulled some of that I just didn't see in it. For humor is dangerous.
Curtis?
I'd be more comfortable with including the typology, but leaving out what a sabbatical is not. That is pretty silly to me.
maybe more of the positive, what it is, it's an opportunity to further study, it's an opportunity to, share your knowledge and expertise going into the future, but, sort of a positive viewpoint.
So maybe edit the 5 to talk about how it goes beyond what it's not to what it should be.
Yeah, I mean, like what, the value of the sabbatical is to bolster your scholarship and expertise, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like all of those kind of goals and words would be, I think, better received by me anyway. And then the other question was like about the scores. What happens to the scores sort of after they're scored, or are they perpetually kept in a file? Can they be used further in evaluations for promotion and tenure, that kind of thing?
Remember for promotion and tenure, your sabbatical applications and the sabbatical reports are not included in the AT applications. You could put them, you have options now that we didn't have. I don't see that they would be required under what's listed in the current bylaws.
Right, they may not be required, but how would they be used by maybe administration, you know, like, I just keep thinking of what's happening in our nation, you know, is the collection of data, just it isn't always clear how data is gonna be used in the future. And is there a limitation on that data? Is something I would hope that this kind of change would address.
Jerry, can I ask you something with this word? So was the intent of scoring them just to help with the committee to decide in terms of allowing them or not? Because I didn't really understand the scoring myself, so what the purpose was.
Sheriff Bill's here now too,
Yeah.
and he was on the committee as well.
Put him on the spot. I understood the scoring to be something to help each stage who evaluates a sabbatical when they're doing their sabbatical evaluations. And to give some focus to the broader areas of things we're looking for in a sabbatical application.
So what would be a passing score?
Not 100. You're not gonna hit all of them. You think that we should try to set a passing score?
What does it mean if the numbers are just numbers? I mean, why have numbers? It doesn't mean anything. You understand?
So we talked a lot about numbers. In fact, part of the reason that we included higher numbers under benefits of sabbatical is that we didn't think somebody would hit all 4 categories in that benefits, because different sabbaticals are targeted different ways. But it does definitely make a difference if you're evaluating a sabbatical and suddenly it's scoring 20 versus one that's scoring 80. The 20 has problems.
But does that mean that the sabbatical be denied?
Possibly.
So somebody could get a 20 and get it denied, and somebody else get a 20 and not get it denied, possibly. It seems
That's
like
whether I'm the scorer or not. If it's scoring 20, I'm not gonna pass it. It's not gonna get out of STEM. I mean, these aren't outrageous things.
they're not outrageous.
I don't know how
What
you
are
can
they
get
receiving?
that low. But we could talk about, do you want
Yeah, does there need
a
to be?
minimum score? Do you think that's important?
Well, I think, like, anytime, I guess you have a scoring guide, you would have, you know, ranges of values, you know, like what would be a low, medium, and high kind of value. So that should be maybe in the descriptors if you're gonna have scores at all. Because, you know, there's not really, whether it's a department chair, a division leader, or faculty personnel committee, they have to be looking at the same criteria, the descriptors of the criteria, and agree on the scoring of that. That would be, you know, a consistent scoring method. But just giving a value of 10 or 15 doesn't provide that guidance.
So it gives more weighting than really describing what the numerical score would be. So one is, do you think that should be elaborated? Do you think the score should be taken off as numbers and just leave the descriptors?
Well, I guess I can't make a decision about that right now, but I think the task force should address something like that.
Well, I ask a question related to that. So even if the scores were left in place and someone got a very high score, but there wasn't the ability for that person to take the sabbatic because there's no replacement person, which has happened. So that, in a way, it's sort of meaningless. They presented a great sabbatic proposal, but they would still be
It
potentially
might be
denied.
delayed a year.
Right. So I don't, I thought the scores were in there for a reason to help evaluators just sort of, when they could only allow so many sabbatics or something, in a year, and that would help them sort of define that, but I'm not sure
Especially if you
that's
have a
the
committee
purpose.
too, you can, each person is scoring something, it gives you a way to compare and discuss strengths and weaknesses and highlight differences that people saw.
But those levels don't talk to one another.
Right.
So they could be denied early where they'd be passed later, or vice versa.
Mhm.
And there's no rationale, there's no consultation about that in between.
Well, no one is denied till they reach the provost.
I see.
I mean, each of you each stage recommends. So it never gets pulled along the way, just like a P&T
Yeah.
isn't pulled along.
So the scoring then, and I don't wanna, have, too much of this take time, but it was just something that came to mind, but I guess it would be like an opinion.
Mhm.
It's more of an opinion than it is a score, because the score doesn't have any criteria.
Mhm.
Curtis and Nikki.
So, two things, I had kind of the same worries, and then my thing just closed. Let me see if I can remember without it. So, I was worried, and then things you said made me feel a little better, so I'm wondering if those can be addressed maybe. So, first of all, I saw those highest ones on the bottom, those 15s, and I was thinking about like a student, it's like, oh my God, I have to do all that or I fail the exam. And your rationale was the other way, that, if you're hitting one or two of those, you should get a lot of credit for that, which makes sense to me, I just didn't read it that way. It felt like I had to get 100% on everything. And then the other thing also, that first I felt bad about, and then when you explained it, I felt better, it was like this, well, should we have a passing grade? It's like, But on the other hand, if you had a number, and I can use it while I'm figuring out and say, yes, I can clearly beat that number, and I can say why. Here's this, here's this, here's this, then that doesn't bother me near as much. But somehow just seeing that thing like a scoring guide felt kind of intimidating.
And the other thing, I'm sorry, the other thing that it might be analogous to is the guidelines for departmental expectations.
Mhm.
Because those have some, you can do a lot in one category, not as much in another
Mhm.
category. So maybe if this guide was reconfigured to have some of that type of structure.
So if it said that a good proposal is one that ranges between 60 and 80, that would give more comfort that you didn't have to hit the top on everything.
Yeah,
Mhm.
or that maybe, some of the things are like as critical as, say, a peer-reviewed article, that has to be in there, otherwise, the chances are not good or something, or it has to be overcome by 3 other things or something like that.
I like how you said a range from this to this, not just at least this. If that's something.
I wanted to make sure I understood correctly that departments aren't supposed to deny faculty members a sabbatical when they apply, because that's happened in my department.
Departments can recommend against.
Uh-huh.
Each level, you recommend or you do not recommend. But like everything on this campus, the true decision never happens until it gets Mary's signature.
Okay,
So all of us have much opportunity to persuade, but we have very little opportunity to actually create an end decision.
Okay, so I think maybe culturally each division, department,
Whoever we are.
whoever has been different, because in my area, somebody's proposal was completely withheld because a few faculty members did not like the nature of the proposal. And the person really needed a sabbatical, and so I'm,
I don't think that's in the bylaws.
well, it may not be in the bylaws, but it's something that I think is not consistent. And so I just think we need to be cautious of sweeping processes with a broad brush, because it's done one way in one place doesn't mean that there isn't some other cultural norm in another department.
So maybe we could clarify that in the writing sheet.
Possibly, yeah, I'm not sure what to do with it, Sherry. I don't know, but I want to put that out there.
Okay.
John?
I was hoping not to get involved in this discussion.
I was too.
And I can't say that I've done due diligence on looking at the proposal, so I don't mean to offend members of the committee who probably worked pretty hard on it. I have some real philosophical issues with boiling everything down to a score on a rubric and adding up a bunch of scores on rubric and saying, okay, you go, you don't. Especially when sabbaticals are an opportunity for a faculty member to either pursue a new line of thought, or to recharge batteries, or to correct deficiencies that have begun to show up in their performance. The sabbatical application process should be a conversation between a faculty member and supportive members of the faculty. It shouldn't be a matter of putting numbers on paper and deciding go or don't go. So that's all I have to say. I hope that we would use the process of sabbatical applications to find ways to support faculty members, especially those who have served for 7 years, are burned out, and need to address deficiencies in their performance.
I'm not quite sure how the scale, the way we applied it, really inhibits that. It's not, it's not really, at least the way we conceive of it, and just looking at it in terms of what I would do with it statistically, those aren't, it's not a quantitative score. It's very much qualitative. It's like when you do a feeling thermometer score or something like that. For one person, feeling pretty good about something's a 55, for somebody else it's a 70. The idea is that as a trend, they're going to go in a certain direction, derived from the merits of the application. That in fact is a conversation. I think it's a mistake. It's certainly methodologically a mistake to think of it as a quantitative score. It's not objective in that sense. We don't know what the difference is between, in a 15-point spread, between a 5 and a 7, except qualitative.
That's exactly the kind of methodological issues we ran into with the program prioritization process.
I'm not sure it's analogous, because the reason why I say it is that having sat for a couple of years on faculty personnel, what I liked about this was it gave us a more concrete assessment to it. It's not a statistical measurement, but there's something that happens in someone's head when they have to pay attention to something and have to assign a numeric value to it, even if it is only a symbolic representation of not so good, pretty good, very good. Okay. I think it's
Okay.
useful.
Well, I guess I appreciate that the charge to your committee was to try to achieve some comparability across programs in the way sabbatical applications are assessed. And I guess my comment doesn't really address that process. My comment has more to do with communication back to the applicant and tying sabbatical applications together with assessments of faculty developmental needs. So I just hope we'll bear that in mind.
One of the categories is professional development in the different areas. So that's why we did split out quite a wide variety of things that a sabbatical could be targeted toward to help self-improvement.
But then how does that speak to the requirement of presentation of some sort? If someone's working on deficiency, but yet there's that requirement of some sort of presentation, how does that doesn't necessarily make sense. I mean, how do you speak to that?
It would, in the sense that, if suppose you were doing some sort of continuing development of some kind, some pedagogical method or something like that, and during the sabbatical you would be applying yourself to that. You'd be learning a different method or something. The idea would be that when you come back, you would be able to do some sort of presentation in which you suggest, this is where I didn't feel as strong, there's a new way of doing this, here's what it is, here's how I plan to apply it. Here's how it makes sense with the courses I teach, how it will enhance the way that I teach it. It's a way of explaining, this is why for the last term of the last year, I needed to do this, so that next time I go into the classroom, this is what I'm going to be doing. And then it's left to the department to track that and find out how well you're doing.
So,
Or not.
perfect. So in terms of presentation then, a report that outlined that would speak to that?
I think it's the only way you could do that.
That would
You
make
have
sense
to,
to
here's
me.
what I did, here's what I learned,
Right.
here's what I'm going to do with what I
In your
learned.
report,
Yeah.
as opposed to, are you gonna go to SOAR and say, hey, I did this, or somewhere else, or what the venue is for that presentation?
You might do a presentation at your divisional or at your program level about some, the pedagogical pieces that you learned that might benefit other people in your area. You learned something.
I guess that takes me back to that word required, and how that plays out in this, in this scenario. It would make more sense that that would be a report as opposed to a public display.
So you're thinking that what the person learned would not be something that would be a
I'm
benefit
not,
to anyone
I'm
else?
just saying that we shouldn't preclude the possibility that someone could do a report and speak to the benefits of, or the personal benefits of their staff.
So if I'm understanding you, it wouldn't necessarily be something that they would disseminate publicly. I'm wondering why not? If it has
Well,
value,
I mean,
presumably it has
that
value.
takes us back to the requirement, and I think Sue, you were gonna look that up, right?
Yes, ma'am. I'll answer, to give you an example. If somebody was gonna do a program feasibility study for something that we might consider doing here at the university, and we decide that it financially doesn't pencil out, and that it's a direction we shouldn't head, it's probably not appropriate for SOAR, it's not gonna go into a journal. It's something that comes back and informs the university's decisions for the future, and I think would be a really appropriate use of a sabbatical, but completely inappropriate for something other than a report.
But what if you were to say, report out to your division? I looked at this over the sabbatical, we probably
Yeah.
shouldn't think of this.
Yeah,
You're making a
but-
recommendation.
Yeah, I just think that there's a different implication of, I just think it has a different implication, so I would rather have loose language knowing that there have been just a few issues or related to sabbaticals, than swing completely the other way and try to fix a bunch of stuff that maybe isn't broken, unless the sabbatical problem is more widespread than we know. And I think that's what I'm not clear on. Are we really trying to fix something? It hasn't been a big problem. Or I just don't know the scope of the problem. And I feel like we risk going really, really swinging to this one direction to fix an isolated case or two.
I've just reviewed the old form that's still on the Provost website and the supplementary information and the bylaws, and I see nothing about presenting findings anywhere in any of those. I do also want to mention, to kind of speak to other people speaking to, it says after sabbatical completion, faculty are required to present their findings. Now, if I took a sabbatical to get for professional development, I need to explore new areas of computer science, get up to date. What are my findings? What have I found? I mean, I guess I can give a seminar on that topic maybe, but certainly the whole division wouldn't be interested in that. So I'm a little uncomfortable with wording. And if I were also, say I go present my findings at a conference, an international conference, wouldn't that meet the criteria, or do I?
Yeah.
But it doesn't according to this statement. This thing says it has to be at a division or all campus forum. So.
So it's certainly reasonable for Senate to recommend that we alter required to encouraged. Is that what I'm hearing?
And that's what it's always been, in my experience. That's what I was told last time.
Yeah, that's what, I was just skimming the bylaws too, I'm not seeing it as listed as one of them.
And I looked in the form, the supplemental form, and I just see it.
I initially had a problem maybe with that word required also, but then I started thinking about how many good things faculty are doing that nobody else really knows too much about. And even within their own department, people aren't sharing their scholarship. They go off to a presentation somewhere, but they don't really tell the people that they're working with every day. So I think that we, you know, whether the word is encouraged or required, the intention, I think, is that people share their experience and what they've gained from their sabbatical. And it might even be something that's not so significant as we're thinking it might. But it is a chance for people to really reflect on what they're doing and improve their teaching. So who wouldn't be interested in that, you know?
Great. Any other questions? Well, it does sound like there was the suggestion, Sherry just mentioned, to look at
So you
language
just
of
made a
encourage
wonderful
to
argument
require.
against it, I love.
I do agree, yes.
But it didn't really address my objection, which is maybe I don't have findings, maybe I just learned about, you know, whatever.
No, but you had an experience, you had a scholarly experience
That you could share.
that you could share. And at the division level, I think that would be the appropriate one, because you're working with a cohesive unit. It might bring, you know, people that, you know, maybe there's only one person that comes from a different department than you've ever associated with, but now you've, you know, someone else is learning a little bit more about you. In a positive way.
Maybe our
I'm sure how to take
recommendation-
that.
Maybe our recommendation would be something like, are highly encouraged to share with
Yeah.
the university or individuals within the university.
Or in a formal setting, like Kevin was saying, if it goes to if it results in a presentation at a conference, that's public. And they can read the abstract or the
But
submission.
that's still sharing it.
Yeah.
So I think if you say encouraged to share their findings or, that would have taken into account all sorts of different venues. It doesn't necessarily have to be
Appropriate
oral.
venue, in an appropriate venue, is a catch-all phrase.
And maybe the other measures of accountability in that form are getting to what the intention of the revision is for, and maybe it doesn't need a scoring guide. That whole section might not be necessary because all the other accountability measures are in there to bring people to a codify them.
All right, anything else? John?
Just a quick comment, I think one of the things this reflects is the need to develop on this campus more venues, more culture around sharing what we're doing with our colleagues on campus. I mean, even in our small SSPC division, it made a lot of difference after we became a unit, that people started talking about what they were doing in the classroom and doing the research. It makes for a much more collegial atmosphere, and we can find opportunities to work together that, with the tendency for people just to sit in their offices and go to class, we miss out a lot. And I think it's important we address that as a campus.
There's nothing else, we'll move on to action items. All right, the first one is the campus theme, revolution. We discussed it last Senate meeting. Certainly now up for a motion. Somebody is so inclined, unless there are additional conversations about said theme. John?
I move we adopt the theme of revolution for next year's campus theme.
Is there a second? Anyone's quicker? All right. Any discussion on this? All right, all those in favor? Opposed? Abstained? Fantastic. Thank you very much for coming, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Great news about the revolution.
Stay tuned.
Did I skip? Oh, I'm so sorry. I jumped right ahead. Back up for a minute. Faculty nominations for faculty rep, the SOU Board of Trustees, or what we call the I Board. If the elections committee would be able to give us, oh yeah, you guys are over there. Would you guys be able to give us a quick update on where we're at?
Yes,
So the nominations have been out, I think tonight closes the 5-day period, and we selected that just to be consistent, that there was no rule for that. This is kind of a new deal. And we have 5 confirmed nominees, and I'm waiting to hear from one. Did you want those names?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Jody Waters, Greg Jones, Ed Battistella, Amy Belcastro, and Dennis Slattery have all agreed to their nomination. And I'm waiting to hear from Michael Pucker in biology.
Okay.
So the ballot will go out tomorrow morning and close in 5 days. So, as I understand it, we'll take the top 3 names to put forward.
Right.
This is for the faculty rep, right?
Yeah.
And Greg is still considered faculty?
No, he's
Ah.
a director.
Good point, yeah, I'll get back to him.
Yes.
No.
Did you know? Yes, thanks. It's in big states here. And the other thing is some of the people are beginning to ask what might be required of them. Not even just for the application process,
Right.
but what materials they want to get
Not
together.
that you-
and I
Oh.
think the- Yeah, the sooner we
So to
can get back
submit
to them.
if they
Yeah,
go forward.
Yeah, so if we have information
Boy,
on
that's,
that.
Yes, there is a non-disclosure form that a company background check done, they send the
Okay,
material
this
up,
is also-
yeah, they send the material up to state, I will track that down.
Okay.
Get that to you. Sorry, I didn't mean to skip over that.
That's okay. Thought you had a secret plan.
No.
So what was it?
Okay. So now that that's covered,
could you read that one more?
Yeah, so I'll leave Greg's name off.
Okay.
Jody Waters, Ed Battistella, Amy Belcastro, Dennis Slattery, and I have not heard back from Michael Parker.
Okay, any other questions about the iWork material? Okay, so we're then jumping ahead to now. The university studies courses, Lee pointed out, very quickly after I sent out the announcement for the agenda that in fact had already been done under the 2-week waiver rule last Senate meeting, so it's already been approved, so we're good with that. Which kind of brings me up to a point in between these two areas, the information item and the action item. Now that we are streaming, do we want to continue to approve minutes even though the minutes are now just bulleted items? They're much less material, whereas the stream is really the substance of the material. Kevin?
Oh, I was gonna say, yes, I think we still need to make sure that Larry didn't make an error or.
Okay, all right, no worries. I was just I remember we had a conversation about this, but wasn't sure where we went with it, so. All right. Larry has provided those 2 sets of minutes, so I will send those out for review, and they will be eligible for votes for approval in the fall. Yes.
The videos are up. Kevin got those posted. I want to make a note about the second one. I thought it had stopped recording halfway through, but then today I found the second half, so I got it all together. I will get that to you, Kevin, and then that'll get reposted when we do today's.
Okay, great, fantastic. And then, yes, John?
Are those posted on the Senate website?
Yeah, minutes. Go to minutes.
SAU/.
So there's
Senate
links
minutes.
to the minutes. Did those just go today, Kevin?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, it did.
Okay, moving on. The academic policies material. Jamie is here to answer any questions if we have any. We talked extensively about all 7 items that came forward last week from Academic Policies Committee. Any questions?
Were any modifications made based on our discussion last week?
I did not receive any recommendations. The only question I had to bring an answer to was how many diplomas or how many degrees would be affected by not awarding them with a financial hold. And I can tell you in the last 12 months, 198 awarded degrees had financial holds. So if we reverted back to the official policy of not even clicking award, we would be down 200 completers for the last 12 months. There's not a great way to pull data and tell you how many of those have now fixed it, but that is 200. I can tell you for spring 2014, 266 of our students who are supposed to graduate next week have financial holds on their account.
And this includes the missed class policy for athletics?
No, that's a separate set of them.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Jamie or the 7 items presented by academic policy? All right, there is a potential, yes?
Well, that's a lot of people, and I'm just wondering, you know, do we ever capture the revenue from those people eventually, or?
We do, and we actually are starting this term with another outreach to them as far as before they graduate. So Anna Reeve with Business Services, who's in charge of collections, will be emailing students who are graduating at the end of spring to say, hey, you owe us money, let's make sure we get that taken care of so you can get your diploma. And we're reaching out to the students before they disappear from us.
Because waiving this then means that they get their diploma anyway, right?
No, they still won't get their diploma, it just means I can click award, so they can be captured in completion rates for state and other entities, as well as if they pay it off but they never tell me, they can still get their transcripts and get jobs. Yes.
You would need to pay it off to get the transcript.
Pay it off to get transcript and the physical diploma.
Okay.
No.
I move we approve the 7 academic policies that we presented last time.
Is there a second? Any other discussion about the 7 academic policies recommendations that came forward? Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions?
Well, bad person over here last time.
Okay. Great. Carries forward. All right, the next item is the professor of practice. There were some questions last time about the requirements in the different areas as far as scholarship, teaching, and service. I sent out all the material that Sherry had sent to me, thanks to Brian tracking that down from last time. I give the credits where they're due. And Larry did just recently send me a chronology of basically the same sets of information as far as from last year's Senate meeting and last year's discussion about the professor of practice. So I think the area of concern that we're still discussing is the area of scholarship, and whether or not it's required and or whether or not it is, what level it has to be at. So let's open back up the discussion.
So, not quite on scholarship, that's still sort of open, but I wrote down a set of other questions. Is there a notion of terminal degree for these that is not described in the OERs or in the language that Terry put out from last time? That is it a 3-year contract? So not tenure, which that is described in the OERs. Well, it's described as not tenure in the OER. It's not described that it is a 3-year contract. And finally, in the 52913 minutes, there was a statement salary would be closer to professorial rank than instructor rank. And I'm wondering if we can get a little more precision about that statement.
So my understanding is that that particular piece, the salary was what it was $2,000 less than the professorial rank. So a person coming in at professor of practice year 1 would be making $2,000 less than an assistant professor.
And would we see that in that?
That was negotiated in the 2013-15 CBA and would be subject to negotiation every time the CBA opened,
That's what all salaries.
as would all salaries. As to the 3-year piece, that would have to be decided when you chose how to put that into the expectations in bylaws 5. The assumption we were on in the beginning was that they would move to 3-year extendable contracts upon promotion to associate, similar to instructors moving to those on promotion to senior instructor. But that would depend on how you chose to lay out Section 5.
I'm a little confused, because when you look at the OER, they say scholarly activity may or may not be required. So if we say we don't require it, then that aligns it more with professional track. But now we're talking about professorial. Is that correct? Am I confused? So
No,
where's the alignment going to be?
my
I guess?
understanding is it is a blending of the two. It's a blending of the instructor and the professor, because there are individuals who have expertise in an area who don't have a terminal degree, but can provide a very substantive contribution
their
to the department because of their experience. And so, it's the discussion that we've had in the course of the last years has been largely to the scholarship piece. But I think it is up to the institution to deem what level of scholarship is required, if any, and where, the focus piece of the scholarship and or service. So right now, I mean, our basic charge right now is just to make a determination of if this is something that we want to have as a rank
Right.
within our ranks as faculty. We're not right now at this very moment making the determination of all of these particular pieces of what this particular professor of practice looks like.
Okay. That's all.
Maybe I wasn't clear about that part, sorry. Any other discussion points? Dennis?
I guess I'd be interested in hearing from people that feel, I mean, they're in fields like, say, business, maybe computer science, where this would be an advantage or a disadvantage.
Sure, well, I think there's a guest here who would certainly speak to that. I'm sitting right behind you. Brian, if you'd like to elaborate?
Sure. Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Well, I was hoping to hear from faculty in the areas of say, certain departments where this would be an advantage or perhaps a disadvantage to have this rank in their department.
Sure. Well, the worst kept secret is that this affects me. For those that don't know, I used to work in finance, so I have a background in actuarial science. And then I've come to work in the math department. So the way I can see it playing out as advantageous to both the department and the division would be my specific knowledge of the industry I don't think is contained anywhere else here on campus. So I think having that interdisciplinary knowledge could be really useful, especially with the house model. If there were to be some sort of a finance type house, then I could speak to things both from a mathematical perspective and then from the applied, I actually did this and this is what people do in the industry, that kind of stuff. I think it really is hard to answer that generally. I mean, I can only speak selfishly of my own, the specifics to my situation. So I guess the pros and cons would really be determined by the individual in question and what use their department/division has for them.
Right.
Does that answer what you're getting at?
Partly, I was thinking of like fields that maybe aren't, and yours may be that, fields that aren't able to attract people from those areas because the salaries aren't large enough, so they don't become a professor because they're going to be in private industry and get twice as much or something like that.
This won't
So-
solve that.
What's that?
This won't solve that.
This won't solve this, and so I was wondering if even if it doesn't solve it, does it solve something, add something to the department?
So that gets back to the notion of terminal degree. If there's, if terminal degree is not required, then I think it might solve some things for our department, I'll say. There's a possibility that, we could hire somebody who's, has a bachelor's to do some stuff for us. Looking at Kevin, so when he gives me the evil eye, I'll know to stop talking. We would at least have that flexibility.
I don't
Perhaps.
ever hire anyone below a master's, but it would open up things like Brian has a double master's rather than a PhD.
Right, I can only speak to my experience, but like Sherry said, I have 2 masters, but I think really where I qualify more for this was my industry experience in the field. And yeah, the salary will never be comparable, and you can't look at salary as pay, vice versa, or whatever really SOU offers a complete package that what you get for working here is a lot more than just what you make. That being said, it's very difficult to make up the huge difference in salary when you're working on the professorial track. And while it does not solve the issue, for me personally, it makes the difference between, okay, it'll work or it won't work. Being able to be offered a slightly better package that in conjunction with all the other benefits that SOU offers makes up for the fact that the salary is never really going to be comfortable. So while it doesn't solve the problem, I think it helps a lot. Personally, that's just one person.
Curtis and then Vicky.
Oh, thank you. So again, from the mathematics department, an issue we had was filling mathematics education people. Traditionally, at a big university, you would hire people with a PhD in mathematics education. Often those people know nothing about public education and training of teachers. So our last 2 hires we had, they were successful. Neither of them have a PhD. And we were able to argue for an exemption to the terminal degree, and they're actually professorial track. That did cause friction for each of them when they went up for promotion. So plus and minus is gonna keep flexibility for us. And maybe minus, they're gonna make a little less money, but it seems to at least be an attempt to match up that disconnect.
For us in the arts, it allows us to hire somebody who, say, has a track record as a film composer, who can work from anywhere in the world, but that we could hire to teach music theory or composition or any number of courses for us, but that would never have gone on to get a doctorate degree. So for us, the flexibility, especially for applied instruction, we could get a flautist with a symphony who does not need a doctorate to have that position, but it would be wonderful for teaching applied lessons and better than anybody we could have otherwise.
Because I could see, and I could see where it would be advantageous to fill some of those areas of weakness or just budget, you know. Probably bigger picture, would it erode the, you know, the tenure track system just a little bit more than has been eroded so far? I can see where it would give a lot of flexibility to administration because they could offer those kind of packages to and not be burdened with tenure. So, you know, I can see that to be something that's valuable, but there is a repercussion down the road.
Well, that's an issue with our 2 hires. We think of them as full-on faculty professorial colleagues, and they don't haven't necessarily always been treated that way by upper administration. I don't know if this is the right fix for that or what. It addresses it.
But they are tenured faculty.
They are tenured faculty. They can get hired by administration at that level. Can't be off the record anymore, but it sort of came out that, well, really you should have been hired in some sort of professor of practice.
Any other discussion points about the professor of practice rank?
So, Vicky, can we find any flautists that have master's degrees? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that just settles it then. All right, if there are no other discussion points, shall we be willing to entertain a motion?
I move that we approve the professor of practice.
I'll second that. Okay, I'm confused.
Me too.
So you're moving that we approve to have that as an additional rank?
Yes.
Is that what you're saying, but not the characteristics of it defined? Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
So, what was
Maybe
that?
let's restate this.
Yeah,
So your motion is that we approve the rank of professor of practice as a rank that we have at the university, not all the conditions that are within a professor of practice.
Yes, correct.
Is this still friendly and seconded? Does that clarify? Sure.
Just a little suggestion. If you're gonna approve a rank that doesn't exist in the bylaws, I would suggest that you approve the rank and charge the Constitution Committee to develop the language in section 5 to support that
I
rank.
was keeping them separate, but that is a great
Well, I think
point.
you've gotta marry the 2 or
Okay.
you have a problem, because we
Okay.
could have a rank with no
Nothing?
guidelines.
Right.
Which then-
Get hired into that one.
Which then has to be subsequently approved.
I would make that a friendly amendment, so accept that as the friendliest of amendments,
Yeah.
and say all of that, if that serves us better.
Dave, can we discuss that a little bit more?
Yes, absolutely.
So, what does that mean, for example, the professors in the math department? Now that this would come on board, are they grandfathered in, or do they now have to go down to?
Oh, they're not going down.
Okay, all right, I just was.
No, there's stories that they're already.
Yeah,
That, okay,
yeah.
yeah.
Good
so-
question.
Yeah.
No,
This
this
is
should only be opening a new option.
coming.
Right, for future hires, is what we're saying.
Right.
And this is in
So a position would have to come open in a department, just like a regular.
Well, that's
position?
actually a good question.
Yeah.
What about moving up for an existing hire?
What'd you-
Right, I mean, that.
Sorry.
Will we have to address that?
What Provost Klein had said is that people could be reappointed to the position.
They could.
Yes, they
Did he
could.
say based on anything?
Based on if people fit that new position. What he told me is that I could be reappointed to that position without there being a national search for the position. That's the exact word.
Would that apply for all departments?
No, only tall people would be.
Or good in math?
Yeah, right. Honestly, I don't know. I could just be.
I mean, that seems like a budgetary issue as well.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I don't think anybody would get anything, but I think departments, divisions would have the option to reappoint based on people fitting that criteria. And then it would also be, I don't want, Sherry probably can speak better than I can, but it would also be an option for new hires.
Departments would need to make a case for why a new position was needed. And then they could make a case to appoint an existing person to that new position. But you'd have to have a position approved that went with that new rank. I don't think you can just say, we want to change all our instructors to professors of
Right.
practice, let's just do this
So it
across
would be
the board.
more on the professional side that could happen.
And it'd go through process, much like proposing a new
Yeah.
position.
Yeah.
Don't you think so, Sue?
I do.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be analogous to a promotion process?
Actually, it'd have to be separate. Same way that changing an instructor to a professor. If we had an instructor who happened to get their doctorate, they don't just automatically go into the professorial because they were hired in
Yeah,
a
they
professional
apply.
position. You would need to justify why you need a line in the department that would be professorial. And then you would have to make a second argument for why that instructor should be reappointed to that line rather than doing a search. So there's just steps.
So is those steps, are they clear now, or is that part of the language that will develop?
That's part of language will develop.
The language you'll develop are not those steps. The language you'll
Yeah.
develop is what the position would have to
Yeah.
look like.
So those
to
steps
fit.
are clear somewhere.
Now, they'd be analogous to an instructor going to finish
It
his
would,
degree.
it would be any reappointment.
Mhm.
You are hired into a position, a new position is open, and you can reappoint someone or you can search for it. And that's been practiced for as many years as I've been at this campus. I mean, that's not a new process of any kind.
But many instructors here have terminal degrees and aren't.
Right.
Right.
So I feel like that's kind of,
You have to argue for the position first and then the person.
Any other discussion on this? Alright, so the motion was,
Yes.
so the motion was for the approval of professor of practice with the adjoining language that we go through the bylaws. Seconded. No other discussion points, all those in favor? Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries.
Oh, when the abstains, could you?
Great. That's it as far as action items. The last item up is the elections. So, could we get an update as far as the overall elections from the elections committee?
Okay, so we've done chair elections, in some cases chairs were appointed, and I don't have a list right now, just
Okay.
how that's split, but we can distribute that formally, if people are interested in who the new chairs are. Again, it was kind of a mixed process, in some cases, division directors requested elections, as we had sort of new programs and new configurations, and in other cases, they were appointed. by, I think, 2 revisions back, arts and letters, social sciences, and sciences, and School of Ed and School of Business. Those positions have all been filled. I don't have the specific names with me right now, but we're still missing business. So we're still missing a rep from business for faculty personnel committee. And we have solicited 3 times over for that, and I've been in contact with their, not their new chair, but their division director, and not sure what really about that. And then the Senate elections, you have the list. We had, I think, 11 departmental level turnovers, so we had quite a few. We filled, I think, 9 out of the 11, and we're waiting to hear on 2, trying to be a little flexy so we don't have more positions turned to at-large positions. If they do, we'll have to run those in the fall, as we get back. We don't have time to oversee them, so. Is that a good enough
That's
update?
fantastic.
UPB's got some stuff going on too, and we've been asked to handle that, and we should finish that up probably by next week.
So at this time, I would like to invite the new senators who got the email, who were recently appointed as senators, to please stand and come sit at the table. There includes quite a few of you in the audience right now. Generally, the material that we do at the end of the year, as far as the sitting of the new senators. So, just a quick introduction and what departments we're representing. Great.
Oh, Dennis Slattery, School of Business. I couldn't do both, so I did volunteer for UPC, but I got told I couldn't.
I'm Deborah Rosenberg, Performing Arts.
Fantastic.
Oh, Bill Hughes, Political Science.
Is that it? Is that all the?
Yep, it's the library.
Okay, fantastic. Well, welcome. And there were some new people but they were actually returning, which includes Rich. Garth? Yes, Garth, fantastic. Kevin and Deb, and I think that's it as far as all the returns. What's that? I didn't leave.
Sherry, when was your term going to expire?
It is a 13 return. Yes, I'm sorry, and you, Curtis, you were.
Right?
Yes. Yep, so that's everybody except for the 2 that are still in question. And now, time that I have certainly been waiting for, is the election of the new Senate Chair, Vice Chair, Secretary, individuals for Constitution Committee, Committee on Committees, the Webmaster, and Elections Committee. So I have asked quite a few of you around the room if you would consider working as Senate Chair and Vice Chair. Up to no avail. Unfortunately, haven't had very much response. I do certainly don't want you to just default and say, okay, I'll do it, because it is quite a bit of work. But I would certainly at this time entertain any nominations to be the Senate Chair, or nominations of other people to be Senate Chair who are current senators. It's true.
I did offer you that.
I know you appreciate that. Ms. Vicky.
If he would accept, I would nominate Dennis Slattery.
I'm not, I was looking at you because I thought
I
you
think
should
it's a
be
conflict
nominated.
of interest, I'm the absent president, I define that, thank you.
My schedule would be crazy, at least until the end of the year, and I just don't think I could do it until after. So, thank you, Liz.
This is quite an interesting condition that we're finding ourselves in. Well, we can work on the rest of the stuff, or we can reconvene in a couple of weeks and hopefully try and hammer this out. More lengthy process. Yes? Larry? All right.
Poor Larry doesn't know how to say no. Even in the department.
You know,
So?
Dave, I'm representing John King.
Mm-hmm.
He's on sabbatical this quarter,
Yes.
but maybe he'd be interested, I don't
He
know.
said no.
Oh, he did?
Yeah.
Okay.
Bill's done it before, right?
Don't even think about it.
Okay, well, there is a current nomination that Larry is, or to be elected as the next Senate Chair. Is there a second?
A second.
Fantastic.
Are you sure you want? Okay.
Just doesn't want to be secretary anymore.
Right, so, is there an individual that is willing to be nominated and or serve as the secretary? Or, sorry, as the vice chair for next year?
One thing we talked about at AC was that the vice person should also be thinking about replacing.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's always been a
That is normally
tradition
the
over the
tradition,
years.
but I only got this man to do it for me on the condition that he was not going to be the Senate Chair again, as he has already been the Senate Chair.
But the idea is the vice person should be thinking about replacing.
I think Amy Belcastro would definitely entertain that option. And if she's not on sabbatical that year, I think she's someone who might pop with us.
I think she is
Will
fall.
she have one next year?
She's on sabbatical in the fall.
Jamie?
Dennis as vice.
Oh, good idea.
Nominate Dennis as vice chair?
Yes.
Dennis, are you accepting this nomination?
I have to do what Larry says.
Yes.
Say yes, Larry.
Fantastic. And, no, because this was a self-nomination, that was a secondary nomination, so somebody nominated can accept it.
Yeah.
Secretary. Anybody willing to be the secretary for next year?
You only have to do bulleted notes because it's recorded. It's a lot easier.
John?
I can do secretary.
Is there a second for that nomination?
Yeah, that's second.
Fantastic. All right. So, all those in favor of Larry as chair, Dennis as vice chair, and John Richards as secretary, raise your hands. Fantastic. Congratulations, individuals. All right, Constitution Committee currently is Pete and Carol.
And
And Rich. So are the three of you willing to continue to serve on that committee, considering that there will be quite a bit more information coming in as we go through the summer and then into the fall?
Yeah.
Okay. If there is a need for a fourth person, if you feel that, certainly let everybody know. And additionally, I think Sherry, you and Sue have both said that you were willing to streamline that process for them.
Sherry has been a great help, and since she's my director,
Seems to work.
so far I've been able to make it work.
Or at least you're being told that you have to say that in public. Fantastic. Then Committee on Committees. It was Steve Jessup and Robin Stringfeld, but they are both ending their term of service and they're both off the Senate. And so we do need two new individuals to work on or serve on committees. Are there any individuals willing to do Committee on Committees work?
Aren't there a lot of people missing?
They're always missing. Let's see. No longer.
Well,
Amy might be coming back, yes, no longer. And no longer. And John, are you on next year?
Yeah.
That's right, he's secretary. Okay. I didn't think that far ahead. So all of these people are no longer on Senate, so.
you're the current Committee on Committees?
No.
Oh, you're not. Well, you've done it in the past.
Jessup was, no,
Steve
I've
Jessup.
done elections, and I'm also off now, and maybe I shouldn't even be sitting here. Should we let my
No,
replacement-
No, we needed you to.
We need you.
Well, what is the Committee on Committees involved?
Okay, so the Committee on Committees is all of the secondary committees that are under the Senate work as far as academic policies, University Studies Committee, Curriculum Committee. So it is the collection of those individuals across those three different terms, 1 year, 2 year, 3 year terms.
is posting that material to Senate, getting the word out to the faculty at large, saying these are the positions that still need to be filled, et cetera. So that is the committee's committees.
How often do they meet, do you know?
I don't know. I think most of their material they just met through email.
No.
And how many people do you need for that?
I believe 2 can handle that.
Okay, Mary and I will do it.
Fantastic. And, Claire, are you willing to continue to serve as the webmaster?
Yes, though I will be on sabbatical in the fall.
I can pick up for you if you want for the fall, that's fine, because I've done that before, so.
Okay.
And then elections committee. So, we had 3, we went down to 2 for a while. We need at least 2, preferably 3, for the elections committee. Jane, you said that you are stepping down.
Yeah, Laura Jones is replacing me from our department.
Okay, are you expecting her to continue as working on the elections committee, or no?
I'm not sure, I didn't ask her and I would hesitate to put her in that position.
And Kate, are you continuing on in the elections committee?
This is on the end of
This is it,
job is
okay.
replacing me.
All right, so it looks like we need at least 2 individuals for the elections committee. Do you want to speak to the responsibilities of the elections committee?
If
So
there
get
is,
some
yes.
recruits?
Yeah, this was an interesting year. Next year doesn't look too bad. You can sort of look at the turnover and predict what goes on. And I would be happy to, whomever comes in, to walk them through. Dave did a great job with me the first year, he got invited in and walk me through it. And, yeah, so whomever wants to take it over, can certainly give you the materials. Mostly the scripts are written. Just have to have some better organizational skills than I do.
What's the scope of it? Just Senate elections?
It's Senate elections, chair elections, faculty personnel committee, now also UPD, and other assorted elections.
Like the I-Board, last year we had, 2 years ago, we had a couple of coordinators that did have an elections process, so.
It also included a bit of the confidence vote as well. Although Dave.
Any volunteers?
Years ago, they told me it was the easiest committee you could be on.
And look how you've aged. No, I'm just kidding, Jamie. I'm
Well,
kidding.
I would certainly
You
be
know
willing
I
to,
am.
I would certainly be willing to be one of those people, because I have
You're
1
great
year
at
left.
it.
Well, I have 1 year left, so.
Cool.
Only 1 individual.
If he did it with David, he'd take one.
Thanks.
I figure you know everything now.
He does, he's fun.
All right, well, thank you all very much. I certainly do appreciate all that you've done this year. If Larry and Dennis, if you guys would like to say anything, get us started for the next academic year. Well, oh, I'm sorry, I missed one thing. I'm sorry. Advisory council. So there are 3 at-large positions for advisory council. It consists of the chair, the vice chair, the secretary, and the past chair. But there are 3 at-large positions. If there's anybody interested in serving on the advisory council.
What does that entail?
The advisory council meets off Mondays from Senate, so we meet opposite Mondays, and generally it is working with the president and the provost, or the associate provost, or the director. Sometimes the other VPs have come in, but it's not very often. Mostly it's just with the president and provost to kind of discuss issues that are coming up through campus, things that could potentially be on the agenda, or items that definitely need to be on the agenda for the following Senate meeting. To schedule and discuss other items.
How much do you discuss things that don't ever come to Senate? Is there a real split?
There is an amount. I couldn't quantify it just like right off the top of my head, but there is an amount. A lot of issues just get taken care of on their own, or don't need to come to Senate, or don't need to come to Senate right away. Yeah? Okay. Yeah, you've done.
I'd like, no, I'm already on, but I'd like to note that all the members of AC at this point are male. And we don't use little.
Jamie's off.
Jamie's off, yeah.
Jody's off.
Yeah, and Jody will be complete this year as well.
Right, so. I would appeal to my female colleagues, put a little bit of good sense into
You think it's conflict?
I do, I don't think anybody in the APSU president should be in a higher ranking area of APSU, frankly, or of this group.
Amy, consider it?
If there was a replacement for her for the fall, I think she absolutely would.
Who's that?
Maybe about that. Maybe you can
Why
ask.
don't you keep me in that loop? I'm here in fall and on to that.
But we need ladies.
But you said might need somebody for fall, did I mistake?
Yeah, no, you heard it correct.
You're just not female.
Well, okay, any other ladies want to do this fall?
You just have to pretend for 10 weeks.
Well, wait, we should open that up. Is there someone who would just be willing to do fall, and then Amy might take over?
Pressure.
That's two.
I could almost feel
That's
it.
two, we still need a third.
I thought that was
That's two. Bill, and then Elizabeth. I can ask Amy, but that doesn't guarantee it.
But Elizabeth just volunteered for the whole year, so.
Well,
Or
please,
just
yeah,
do
just
fall.
fall,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. That's why I put it down for.
Why don't you look, talk to Amy?
I'll
and
talk
see
to
if I
Amy
can do
before
fall.
that. Okay, for the
Yeah.
between split between. Okay, now that officially concludes everything. Again, Larry and Dennis, if you guys would like to say anything, start out. I do appreciate everybody's service this year. It's been a blast. It's been a real learning curve. And I'm gonna go hang out with my pregnant wife.
Congratulations, dude.
Dave,
I would, oh.
just a quick question about the Senate rep on UPB. Did you intend to split that one?
No, I didn't intend to. I was gonna talk to the new Senate chair to see
Oh,
if
okay.
he wanted to appoint.
Okay.
Yeah. But he and I have already talked. I agreed to do it if he wanted me to do it.
Cool, we do.
Do you want me to do it? The UPB?
I second the nomination.
Thank you, John.
All in favor?
That's good.
Okay.
Was that something that I would do?
Yeah, you just appoint, you can appoint, you can be.
There's so much power down there, right?
Or you can appoint, as long as they say yes.
If you're okay
And I
with
said yes.
it. Okay, yeah.
Oh, I have a question.
Yes.
We do that over there.
Mary's gonna put it.
It's a new thing.
When's the party?
Yeah.
Right now.
Well, no, I mean, seriously, when's the party? You know, that getting to know you,
Well, the summer
getting
club.
to know all.
So that's not a requirement. but
Well, I
it's
know
certainly
that.
something this-
But I'm asking.
Sure.
I'm putting it out there. I don't think I'm alone in this.
Larry's.
Told you we needed to.
What? Larry's house.
Well, we had a winery.
Larry, join you.
Congratulations.
So Larry, send out a notice.
What can I say?
We need a party.